Well, welcome back to our discussion on communism, our four-section or four-part series. When you look at it on YouTube, you will see it titled Section 1, Section 2, Section 3, and then the portion of cultural Marxism is titled, has three parts. So what I'm doing is examining Marxism from a biblical worldview. In my earlier videos, we talked about origins, worldviews, and strongholds. Every belief system has an origin. It is a worldview. It's the way someone views the world. And then also it is their motivating ideology. In other words, stronghold is what drives an individual to do what they do. Well, I'm examining communism from a Christian worldview, not just simply an economic worldview. Many times on the topic of communism is compared with capitalism, and we talk about the merits or the virtues of one, or the pros and cons of each of them. We talk about the weaknesses of both systems, but that's not the angle which I am examining this topic. I'm coming from a biblical worldview, and I contend that communism is a worldview that seeks to exalt itself against the knowledge of God. It is not just about economics. It is not just about equality. It is a seeking to dethrone God, as Karl Marx is known to say. His chief goal in life was to dethrone God and destroy capitalism. That is the vantage point of which I am examining communism. So we're in our last section, section number 4. And we'll be talking about the red-green axis. We'll talk about a combined effort. What is the red-green axis? The red-green axis is a collusion between the Democrat Party, American Communist Socialists, and other brands of progressives. This is the red component of the axis. So the red represents the communist standpoint. Then the forces of the Islamic Jihad is the green, so named because the color green carries much symbolism in Islam. Most Muslim nations feature green flags, emblems, and other identities. Also, with the red-green axis, many say that green was Muhammad's favorite color. That's why you have this red-green axis. So let me start off today's lesson giving some history and some background as we lead up to this whole axis. The Bible plainly teaches us that for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And also the Apostle Paul once says, this is a faithful saying and worthy of all acceptance, that Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am chief. And I can certainly say the same thing that the Apostle Paul says, that Christ Jesus came into this world to save sinners, of whom I am chief. The Christian church was born in 33 AD in Jerusalem on the day of Pentecost. Many of the devout Jews present were born again and took this faith back to countries in which they lived, all throughout the Middle East, around Persia, areas around Persia, Asia Minor, Egypt in North Africa, and Libya in the West. They went back to Arabia and Rome with this great gospel message. But this early church was met with opposition. This burgeoning body of believers met with resistance early on from the same group of unbelievers who handed Jesus the Christ, the Savior of the world, over to the Roman authorities. One of the church's earliest, most fierce threats was a man named Saul of Tarsus. He breathed out threats and slaughtered those who followed Jesus. He made havoc of the church and sought to destroy that way. but he met with the glorious risen Jesus Christ on the road to Damascus, Syria, and it changed his life forever. The Apostle Paul preached the gospel of Jesus Christ from Jerusalem to Rome and throughout Asia Minor. Philip the evangelist took the gospel to Samaria. The Ethiopian eunuch took the gospel into East Africa. The church faced great persecution from the pagan Roman Empire under Nero, Domitian, and Diocletian. But the church, however, later gained respite from external threats once Constantine came to power, but suffered from spiritual decline and corruption from within for many centuries thereafter, which in essence gave birth and rise to the longest external threat that the church ever faced. During the rifts between the Western and Eastern wings of the church and the wars between the Byzantine and Persian empires, a rising global threat was born. Islam came to power in the 7th century in the Arabian Peninsula and threatened the existing powers of that day. After Muhammad's death in 632 AD, the hordes of Islam spilled out of Arabia and conquered Syria in 634 AD, Jerusalem in 636, and Egypt by 642. The first major wave of jihad was under the Arabs. This lasted from 622 to 750 AD. The Arab Muslim armies charged into the Holy Land, conquered what is now Iraq and Iran, then swept west across North Africa and into Spain, and finally into France. Thank God they were halted from taking over Europe at that time by the hammer Charles Martel in 632 AD during the Battle of Tours. The second major wave of jihad was under the Turks from 1071 under the Battle of Manzikert until 1683. Islam under the Turks became a major threat to Christianity. They conquered all of Asia Minor. The assemblies established by the Apostle Paul long ago, the 7 churches of Asia Minor to whom John wrote and with whom the glorified Jesus spoke, were conquered and forced to submit to a totalitarian ideology of Islamic supremacy. The Turkish wave of jihad reached its furthest extent at the failed seizures of Vienna in 1529 and also in 1683, where in the latter instance, 1683, Muslim army under Kara Mustafa was thrown back by the Roman Catholics under the command of the Polish king, John Sobieski. Constantinople was conquered in 1453 AD. The name was changed to Istanbul, and the Ottoman Empire ruled until their defeat in 1918 in World War I. The Ottoman Empire had joined with the Central Powers of WW1. The Central Powers were Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Bulgaria. And the Ottoman Empire, in Turkey, they joined those forces in World War I in October 28, 1917. The Allied powers in World War I were Great Britain, France, Russia, Italy, Belgium, Serbia, and America arrived later. Russia, however, pulled out of the alliance to begin its Marxist revolution under Vladimir Lenin. Islam's assault on the West, and particularly against Christianity, was stalled at their defeat of WW1. However, a new synergistic force and threat against Christianity has arisen. What one force could not do alone, Islam, the two seek to do together. This is known as the red-green axis, and it is in full force in the 21st century. But let me read a passage of scripture before we move on also. Because in the beginning of our lesson, we talked about the nations gathering themselves together against the Lord. And let's see what Psalm 2 has to say about that. Psalm 2, and it reads this way: Why do the nations rebel and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth take their stand, and the rulers conspire together against the Lord and his anointed one. Let us tear off their chains and free ourselves from their restraints. That is certainly the goal of humanity since the fall. They want to rise up together against the Lord, and they want to tear off what they presume to be God's restraints on their lives. And then it goes on to say, the one enthroned in heavens laughs, the Lord ridicules them. Then he speaks to them in his anger and terrifies them in his wrath. I have consecrated my king of Zion, my holy mountain. I will declare the Lord's decree, he said to me. You are my son, today I have become your father. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your inheritance, and the ends of the earth your possession. You will break them with the rod of iron. You shall shatter them like pottery. So now, kings, be wise, receive instruction. You judges of the earth, serve the Lord with reverential awe and rejoice with trembling. Pay homage to the Son, or he will be angry, and you will perish in your rebellion. For his anger may ignite at any moment. All those who take refuge in him are happy. So we see that the rulers of the world have always gathered themselves together, but we certainly see them joining forces in the 21st century to break off the bands of the Christian rule, of God's rule over the earth. Nebuchadnezzar, one of the kings of Babylon in ancient times, said it best after he recovered from his rebellion and insanity, and he lifted up his eyes and is restored to his kingdom. And he said that God rules in the heavens, in the armies of heaven, and also among the inhabitants of the earth. No one can ask him what he's doing or stop him from doing it. Well, we see many have tried, and now they've done it individually, and sort of they've joined forces collectively to break off their bands. But it also says in Psalm 2 that the one who sits in heaven, he will laugh and have them in derision. So having said that, let's look at this red-green axis. The red-green axis. And who are the components of this red-green axis? We have the red, which represents communism. We have George Soros, the Southern Poverty Law Center, Democrat Party and media. I made that case in one of our earlier presentations, section number 3, when I talked about cultural Marxism. Communist Party USA, Democratic Socialists of America, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, Marxist professors. These make up the red portion of the axis. Well, who are the green portion? CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, which styles itself as a Muslim civil rights organization, but in fact, it was proven that it is Hamas in America. The Muslim Brotherhood, ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America, the various interfaith dialogues, where you have the Muslim Brotherhood reaching out to Christian and Jewish communities, talking about let's come together and have a common word. But it's normally always Islam is lifted up and Judaism and Christianity is put down. A part of this interfaith dialogue is also groups like the Family of Abraham or shoulder to shoulder movements. This is known as, again, the red-green axis. If you want to learn further about the red-green axis, an individual by name of James Simpson wrote a book, The Red-Green Axis 2.0, very detailed, very involved. Who is Jim Simpson? Jim Simpson is an investigative journalist, a businessman, author, and former economist and budget examiner for the White House Office of Management and Budget. Mr. Simpson is best known for his expose on the Cloward-Piven strategy of manufactured crisis. And those of you who don't know what the Cloward-Piven strategy, I encourage you to look it up, because it's all part of this communist attempt to weaken America. Anyway, also he is known, he is featured in the Curtis Bowers award-winning documentary Agenda, Grinding America Down, and is a frequent guest on radio talk shows. That's Jim Simpson. Let's look at the green axis goal for destruction. What is their part in bringing down America? The Quran, Surah 929 says, fight against those who believe not in Allah. So this is not defensive war, because this is just saying people who don't believe in Allah, fight against them, nor in the last day, nor forbid that which has been forbidden by Allah and his messenger, which is Muhammad, and those who acknowledge not the religion of truth. So he says, fight anyone who does not believe in Allah, fight anyone who does not believe in their interpretation of the last day, fight anyone who does not forbid what Muhammad forbids, and fight anyone who does not acknowledge the religion of truth, which they believe and see as Islam. And then it says, even if they are among the people of the book, this was referring to Jews and Christians. How long are they supposed to fight Jews and Christians? Until they pay the jizya, which is a tax, basically sort of like the mob. You pay up for protection, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. Also, let's look at one of their more modern documents. This document is known as the Explanatory Memorandum. It comes from the Explanatory Memorandum for the group that is in North America. It was written by a Muhammad Akram, who was one of the leaders, Muslim Brotherhood leaders in the United States back in the 90s. This document was written May 22nd, 1991, and it was recovered on a raid in an individual's house by the name of Ishmael Albarasi in Annandale, Virginia in 2004. And they discovered, the FBI and the authorities discovered banker boxes, 85 banker boxes filled with what they termed the Muslim Brotherhood treasure trove. And in it was this document called the Explanatory Memorandum. And this was marching orders that Akram gave for the Muslims in America and also throughout Canada. This is for America, North America, Canada, and United States. This is what it says. A portion of it says this: the process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all the world means. The Ikhwan, or in other words, the Muslim Brotherhood, must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands. That's us, the Americans, our media, academia, and politicians and regular citizens, and the hands of the believers, that's the Muslims, so that it is eliminated, America, which they call a miserable house, so that it is eliminated and God's religion is made victorious over all other religions. So we see that it is a supremacist ideology. It goes on. Without this level of understanding, we are not up to this challenge and have not prepared ourselves for jihad yet. It is a Muslim's destiny to perform jihad and work wherever he is and wherever he lands until the final hour comes. So they never quit until they believe, again, their final hour. They have a doctrine of eschatology as well, skewed as it is, but they have one. So they talk about Muslims must do this until the final hour comes, and there is no escape from that destiny except for those who choose to slack. But would the slackers and the mujahideen be equal? Which is a quote from Surah 495. For those interested, look it up and you'll see what that means. So let's look a little bit about this red-green access. Let's see what Andre Carson has to say about this red-green access.
You know, but it's more than just about having 3 Muslims in Congress. I think symbolically it has great value. But I won't rest until 2020. We have 5 more members of Congress. 2022 and 24, we have 10 more Muslims in Congress. In 2030, we may have about 30, 35 Muslims in Congress. Then we're talking about Madam Chair Rashida. We're talking about Madam Chair Ilhan. Hell, we could be saying Speaker of the House Ilhan, Speaker of the House Rashida. Senator Rashida, Governor Ilhan, President Fatima, Vice President Aziza.
So we see Andre Carson certainly advocating getting into seats of power and making change from the inside, as the document mentioned, to sabotage America's miserable house and to eliminate them and make Allah's religion over all other religions. And so we only kid ourselves if we believe that committed Islamists, jihadists, are getting into office to uphold the Constitution. They often mention that the Quran is the supreme law of a land, not the Constitution. They often teach that a Muslim is not obligated to obey man-made laws. And so they are coming in to bring Sharia in from the top down. Let's also look at some other examples. Let's also look at, that was Andre Carson, who was a representative from Indiana. Now let's look and see what the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States has to say about this red-green axis, a fellow by the name of Nihad Awad, who formed CARE in 1994, and that grew out of the Islamic Association of Palestine, which was Hamas in the United States. And so they wanted to put a nicer term on it, and they founded this individual, Nihad Awad, founded CARE in 1994. Let's see what he says about the red-green axis.
That you are powerful. You can make a whole difference in 2016. You can change the reality of our time. This is the time for us as American Muslims to be in the front, not to retreat, because all of you are leaders. Your votes are your negotiating power in the year 2016. Turn your centers, Islamic centers, mosques, into registration centers for voters. Black Lives Matter is our matter. Black Lives Matter is our campaign.
Basically, you are the new black people of America. If we don't stand, you will see Muslims murdered in the streets. We are the community that staged a revolution across the world. If we could do that, why can't we have that revolution in America?
So Nihad Awad, the founder of CARE, which is Hamas in America, he says that Black Lives Matter is our matter. Black Lives Matter is our campaign. So we see the red-green axis there. It's amazing how we in the West refuse to believe what comes out of individuals' mouths. I think sometimes America can be so arrogant that they feel like we're too great, we're too important, we're too powerful to be brought down. And so they look at minority groups with disdain and also contempt, and they're like, well, you know, he's just speaking out of frustration. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's amazing how our political leaders, and many times in academia, they always look down their noses on other groups like they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they mean. I'll tell you what he really means. The man said, Black Lives Matter is our matter. Black Lives Matter is our campaign. That's what he's saying. The red-green axis. We know that Black Lives Matter and Antifa are communist groups. Well, we see here that a sold-out Islamist is admitting that they work together. And I already mentioned earlier in our critique, and when we talked about cultural Marxism, when we went over Black Lives Matter in detail, and we showed the union between those two forces. But also the woman who spoke after him, she said, we are the community that read or staged a revolution across the world. She was referring to the Arab Springs that took place in 2011 up to 2013, which basically brought down Libya, it brought down Tunisia, and brought down Egypt. And Egypt was replaced, the strong man, Hosni Mubarak, who was the president of Egypt for 30 years and an ally to America and Israel, was taken down. And in 2012 or 2013, Mohammed Morsi, one of the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood, became president of Egypt. And of course, that didn't last too long because he wanted to bring in Sharia law too quickly and the people weren't going to have it. So that's what she's talking about. The Arab Springs, the Muslim community staged a revolution, an Islamic revolution across the East. She's saying, why can't we do that same thing here in America? Well, maybe this gives context to what we see taking place in our streets, because CARE and the forces of Islam have joined together with Black Lives Matter and Antifa, and they have taken to the streets, and they are waging a revolution, a Marxist Islamic revolution in the United States. And this is what we see going on out of their own mouths, but yet our authorities don't believe it. Let's look at these individuals talking about the red-green axis. Here we have Priscilla Presley in the red. Everyone knows who Ilhan Omar is in the mic. So Priscilla Presley is a representative, I think, from Massachusetts. And so she is certainly a committed Marxist. And then Ilhan Omar is a combination of the red-green axis herself. She is a committed Marxist and also a committed Islamist. And then we have AOC there in the background. AOC is certainly a committed Marxist who talks about wealth redistribution and wants to give out free everything. And she also is a proponent of the Green New Deal, to basically want to wipe out all of Western culture and civilization, get rid of all of our automobiles, get rid of, redo all of our buildings, reduce our carbon footprint, on and on and on. Free college, free money, free handouts, universal income to everyone. And then, of course, you see off to the screen, you have Rashida Tlaib, which is of Palestinian origin. And so she cites often her Palestinian views and her Islamic views and her hatred for the United States. Well, these women, these four women, which they call the Squad, have made great inroads into our seats of power in Washington, D.C., and they're calling for the dismantling and the disruption of the American way of life. And they're using intersectionality, and they're using Marxism, they're using racism, they're using Islamophobia, and any Marxist term they can get their hands on. If you say anything against them, if you speak out against what they're doing, they'll right away, they'll use their minority female status. In particular, Ilhan Omar. I'm not even going to get into all this going on with her right now. I don't have time. This is not the point of the discussion. But Ilhan Omar, anytime anyone says anything about her behavior, what she's doing, right away she comes up with the intersectionality defense of, how can you say that against me? I'm a woman, I'm an immigrant, I'm a Muslim, and I'm Black. So she'll use that all the time to back people down if they have anything to say against her. So we see again this red-green axis alliance. Let's look at also another case. This is just a recent article that I found by Robert Spencer, Wednesday, June 24th, Robert Spencer on Front Page Magazine. The title is Minnesota State Representative says that Antifa and Muslim groups plan to police Minneapolis under Muslim rule. Well, what's that all about? Because we hear a lot of talk about defunding the police departments. Well, Minnesota has moved ahead to do that. As the city of Minneapolis moves to dismantle its police force, Minnesota State Representative Steve Green on Tuesday stated the obvious that virtually everyone else has been tiptoeing around and pretending isn't there. He says, what you're looking at, in my humble opinion, is communism moving into Minneapolis and St. Paul. And not just communism, but the leftist Islamic Alliance. There you have it, that red-green axis, also known as the red-green alliance. So he says in his humble opinion, it's not just communism, but it's communism with the leftist Islamic Alliance. Green asserted that Antifa and Muslim organizations plan to police Minneapolis under Muslim rule. Those who scoff at such a notion simply aren't paying attention to the recent developments. And so these movements of defunding the police, they're talking about what is going to be the replacement of this if we defund the police. If we get rid of our police departments, who is going to take over? Well, the Minneapolis City Council voted 2 weeks ago to abolish the city's police force. Its plan beyond that have so far been sketchy, but something is going to have to be put in place as an alternative to the police. The New York Times noted that many have called for relying more on self-policing by the community in the way attendees often do at events like music festivals, with the police stepping in only in a true emergency crisis. So they're talking about forming the civilian policing forces made up of Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and also the Muslim Brotherhood. This is, ladies and gentlemen, is what they're talking about replacing the police officers with. There are already moves throughout New York and Canada and other places that have organized Muslim community police forces. They have police cars that strangely and coincidentally look just like the police cars in New York City and Canada and other areas. They have uniforms and they're stocked with Muslim forces that go around basically to enforce Sharia law in those various communities. Well, we see that this thing is coming. It's happening rapidly, right before our eyes. Let's look at now, that is the green axis portion of bringing destruction and dismantling. Now let's look at an example of the red axis, their goal for destruction. And also let's use their words. Let's not be so arrogant to think that we can speak for them and say, oh, that's not what they mean. No, this is what they mean. The West would have to be de-Christianized, said Gramsci, by means of a long march through the culture and the institution. That's where we get that term, the long march through the institutions, which we referred to in part 3 of this presentation, cultural Marxism. Then also we learned right from the Communist Manifesto, what were the goals of Karl Marx? The abolition of property, the abolition of the family, the abolition of religion. This is what they believe. This is their worldview, their motivating ideology. This individual here, Michael Pillsbury, he wrote a book. He was an advisor to the United States. He's a good guy, but he was an expert on Chinese culture. And he wrote a book, The 100-Year Marathon, subtitle, China's Secret Strategy to Replace America as the Global Superpower. Very interesting book. And he advised America for many years. I think he just retired in maybe 2012 or 16, something like that. But a very interesting work. And he warned of Chinese Communist Party and their goals to dominate the world. Let's also look at another publication. It's called Unrestricted Warfare. Unrestricted Warfare, and also look at its subtitle, China's Master Plan to Destroy Who? America. Well, it was published in the PLL Literature Publishing House in February 1999 by two Chinese colonels in the People's Liberation Army. One's name was Kia Liang and Wang Xiangshu, if I'm saying that correctly, probably not. And part of what this book proposes is tactics for developing countries, in particular China, to compensate for their military inferiority with regard to the United States during a high-tech war. So China admitted their inferiority to the military might and machine of the United States. They admitted they were no match for the United States in a kinetic war. So they suggested other measures. That's why it's called unrestricted warfare. The first rule of unrestricted warfare is that there are no rules, with nothing forbidden. The United States is not capable of defending itself against hostilities waged at a political level. So they talk about waging political warfare. Then also it goes on, it says, this is because the United States have never taken into consideration and have even refused to consider means that are contrary to tradition and to select measures of operation other than military means. That's why the United States is open to deception from the Muslim Brotherhood. This is why they're open to deception, because we always think in Western terms. We think that everyone wants to be a democratic society. We think that everyone's ideology has been influenced by the Judeo-Christian aspect of love your neighbor. But there are ideologies that don't teach the love your neighbor concept. And so that's why we're open. The only thing we have is a powerful military, but we're not very good when it comes to subversion. Many people have tricked us and deceived us, and America has gotten in bed with those who ultimately turned on them. And we see the same thing happening. These are the two gentlemen who wrote Unrestricted Warfare. Then also let's look and see how that red-green axis is associated. In July 2nd, 2019, President of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, meets with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing to boost global stability as both nations, Turkey and China, relationship with the United States are tested over economic and diplomatic disputes. Turkey sees that China is on the rise and that if the world order is changing, one of its leaders will be China. And that's saying a lot coming from a man, Erdogan, who has dreams of establishing the Ottoman Empire again and being the leader of that world. Well, he talks about how he sees China also being a leader. I guess they'll, once they both struggle for their rise to power, we'll see what happens and who fights it out, should that ever happen. Let's also look at an individual named HAOTIAN. Who is HAOTIAN? He was the defense minister of China from 1993 to 2003. He was also vice chairman of the Chinese Communist Party Central Military Commission. He delivered a speech to a select group of high-level party cadres. This is the individual right here, a high-ranking Chinese military official. He goes on to say in his speech, and let me give you a premise of this speech. He gave this speech because there was a survey that went out into the Chinese population, the male population of China. And the survey was put out to feel, basically, and it was asking a question. Who would have a problem with training their weapons and shooting women, children, non-combatants, or prisoners of war? And this survey came back with 80% approval, which shocked this general. He was shocked that 80% of those surveyed said that they would have no problem with shooting women, children, and non-combatants, or in other words, military captives. And so he gathered from that if these individuals had no problem shooting innocent, well, then they certainly wouldn't have any problem going to war with an enemy. That's what this speech is based on. Well, in it, it goes on, the Chinese Communist Party's intention is to militarily defeat, occupy, and colonize the United States. This plan has been confirmed by the Russian defector source who worked in China and had information about a joint Sino-Russian plan to invade North America. This plan was drawn up in 1992 after the fall of the Soviet Union. The division of spoils was described this way. Russia would get Alaska and parts of Canada. China would get the lower 48 states, with other countries invited for looting rights. The Russian defector in question was Colonel Stanislav Lunev. A U.S. military source later confirmed the authenticity of this speech. In this speech, he makes a number of comparisons with various civilizations, with Germany, with Japan, and then also his conclusion was Chinese must be the superior race. He says a few things. He says, of Chinese people, our Chinese people are wiser than the Germans because fundamentally our race is superior to theirs. As a result, we have a longer history, more people, and a larger land area. On this basis, our ancestors left us with the two most essential heritages, which are atheism and great unity. It was Confucius, the founder of our Chinese culture, who gave us these heritages. This heritage determined that we have a stronger ability to survive than the West. So again, he's comparing himself. He says that they have the stronger ability to survive than the West does. That is why the Chinese race has been able to prosper for so long. We are destined not to be buried by either heaven or earth. No matter how severe the natural, man-made, or national disasters, this is our advantage. Notice again his bellicose language. Notice who he rages against. As we saw in Psalm 2, why do the people rage and the heathens and nations imagine a vain thing? For the rulers gather themselves together against the Lord. They want to come against the Lord. So he says that that they are destined not to be ruined either by heaven, that's God, or by earth. So again, this contention of mine, this is more than just some economic system. This is an ideology that seeks to exalt itself against God. So he's saying that heaven can't stop their goals and nobody on earth can stop their goals either. He goes on. What makes us different from Germany is that we are complete atheists. So he boasts about his atheism, his disbelief in God. He says our Chinese society has always worshiped sages, the wise men like Confucius, and that is because we don't worship any God. Maybe you have come to understand why we recently decided to further promulgate atheism. If we let theology from the West, which again is Christianity, into China and empty us from the inside, if we let all Chinese people listen to God and follow God, who will obediently listen to us and follow us? And isn't that what it's all about? It's about removing God, not having anyone follow God, but they want the devotion of the world to be to them. They want to be God. They want to take the place of God. As we mentioned in earlier lessons, Saul Alinsky encourages his organizers, community organizers, to play the role of God, to be creators, to be great creators, to create their own world. And we're going to talk about George Soros also, who plays a big part in this whole communist movement. It's about getting rid of God and making man be God. Let's go on. General HAOTIAN continues by saying, firmly grasp the party's control over the nation and firmly grasp the general direction toward becoming the Lord of the earth. And listen to their language. He wants to be the Lord, rule over all the earth. Well, see, we have a problem because Islam wants to rule over all the earth and communism wants to rule all over the earth. It seems like we are at a standoff here. And he goes on saying, only by using special means to clean up, and he uses this term a number of times throughout this speech, this term clean up. He says, by only using special means to clean up America, we will be able to lead the Chinese people there. Because remember, he's talking about invading America, giving the Alaska and Canada to Russia, and China taking the lower 48, inhabiting the lower 48. That means the rest of America. And so they have to clean up America in order to do that. They go on to say, he goes on to say, this is the only choice left for us. This is not a matter of whether we are willing to do it or not. What kind of special means is there available for us to clean up America? Conventional weapons such as fighters, cannons, missiles, and battleships won't do. Neither will highly destructive weapons such as nuclear weapons. We are not as foolish as to want to perish together with America by using nuclear weapons. Only by using non-destructive weapons that can kill many people will we be able to reserve America for ourselves. There has been rapid development of modern biological technology, and new bioweapons have been invented one after another. Of course, we have not been idle. In the past years, we have seized the opportunity to master weapons of this kind. So he's boasting about their mastering of biological weapons. We are capable of achieving our purpose of cleaning up America all of a sudden. When Comrade Xiaoping was still with us, the party Central Committee had the perspicacity to make the right decision not to develop aircraft carrier groups and focus instead on developing lethal weapons that can eliminate mass populations of the enemy country. So they're talking about eliminating mass populations of America, not through conventional weapons, not through nuclear weapons, because they say, well, we can't do that with America because they're more powerful than us in that aspect. So therefore, they said, we'll use biological weapons. Could this be what we're seeing with the COVID crisis? Many have spoke to that. I also did a video calling Whose Virus Is This? If you would visit my channel and look at that. But many have posed that question because this virus did originate in China. And so this man boasted about their ability to do this. He goes on. If you get on the website using keywords to search, and let me set this up. This is disturbing because again, this was a speech given by this individual. And also, as you mentioned, as we looked at on the introduction to this speech, it was told to us by a Russian informant, and it was also collaborated by our military officials. In this speech, he talked about this cleaning up America that he kept using so that they can invade America and take over. Because in it, he mentioned how beautiful America was, not polluted and smog infected like China because it was so populous. And he's looking for a place where they can spread the Chinese population at 1.3 billion individuals. And so they talked about America's oceans and blue skies and beautiful environments. And so we don't want to disrupt that with a bomb. We want to clean it up. And so therefore, when he was talking to this group, he was like, well, you know, this may sound horrible. Hundreds of millions of Americans may lose their lives. So he sought to justify himself. He says, I'm not a monster here. It's no big deal. He says, the Americans, they want to do the same thing. The American elite want to do the same thing to their own people. So don't look at me weird or strange if I want to achieve the same goal. And this is what he says. This is the part of the speech where he introduces, this is very disturbing. He says, if you get on the website using keywords to search, you will find out that a while ago, Comrade He Xing pointed out to the Hong Kong Business News during an interview that the US has a shocking conspiracy. According to what he had in hand, from September 27th to October 1st, 1995, the Mikhail Gorbachev Foundation, funded by the United States, gathered 500 of the world's most important statesmen, economic leaders, and scientists including George W. Bush, the Baroness Thatcher, Margaret Thatcher, Tony Blair, Zbigniew Brzezinski, as well as George Soros, Bill Gates, futurist John Nesbitt. So he names all of these individuals by name. Now you might say, well, why would you take the words of a communist, a Marxist a general? I'm not saying I'm taking his words. I'm saying, okay, can we at least believe that he believes this and he's saying it? So this is not a bad guy or his enemy saying this about him. This is what he is saying, and he refers to a meeting of 500 leaders in the United States in 1995, funded by, given by, or sponsored by the Mikhail Gorbachev Foundation and funded by the United States. And he names all the individuals in attendance. And this is what he says that they were doing. He says, all of the world's most popular characters in the San Francisco Fairmont Hotel for a high-level roundtable conference discussing problems about globalization and how to guide humanity to move forward into the 21st century, because that's what it's always about. If there is no God, somebody has to play God. And these individuals are always playing God. According to what He Jing had in hand, the outstanding people of the world, these world leaders in attendance, thought that in the 21st century, a mere 20% of the world's population will be sufficient to maintain the world's economy and prosperity. Did you hear that? These leaders who want to play God, they came to the conclusion that this world, in order to save this planet and to keep this world going, 20% of the population is sufficient to maintain this world. That sounds bizarre. The other 80%, or in other words, 4/5 of the world's population, will be human garbage, unable to produce new values. That's how the elite view us regular folks, us common folks. Human garbage. Oh, Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, she viewed blacks, poors, and minority as human weeds that need to be pulled up and gotten rid of. Well, these elitists view 80% of the world's population as human garbage. We only need 20% of the population to make the world go round. And in that way also, we'll save the planet in the process. He goes on and says, all the people in attendance thought that this excess 80% population would be a trash population, and high-tech means should be used to eliminate them gradually. I'm just telling you what the man says. I'm not agreeing with the madman. I'm just telling you what the madman says. And do we not see that that's what's going on? Do we not see Silicon Valley taking over, high tech taking over, moving manufacturing and other things out of the way? And so these world leaders feel like we can get rid of the rabble, all the, as Hillary Clinton called us, deplorables. 50% of the nation are deplorables. Let's get rid of these people who cling to their God and their guns. Let's get rid of these religious bigots who are homophobes and Islamophobes and don't want to get on board, and they're science deniers, and they're just in the way. We see that take place. We see they speak their sentiments out of their own mouths. Jesus said, for out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. This is what they see, and this is what they believe. Well, they also have other collaborators. Let's look at one such collaborator. It's an Event 201 that took place on October 18th, 2019. It's called a global pandemic exercise. It met in New York. And why did they meet? Because they said, according to their own website, you can go to the website and look this up for yourself, and you can watch the videos and read what they themselves had to say. Global problems demand global solutions. Again, these individuals who think that they are God, because after all, the God of heaven does not exist. It's a Christian myth and fairy tale, as many of these individuals say. So therefore, since there is no God, somebody has to play God. They believe that they can answer all the world's problems and solve all the world's solutions. Just ask them and they'll tell you. The purpose of this event was to plan out and see what would happen if a pandemic struck the world. They discussed in detail concerning a virus similar to COVID-19. Their goal was to control the narrative of information. In it, they spoke of flooding the zone. And that's what we see. In case you don't know what flooding the zone is, we see it all the time where we are inundated with information on billboards and on the media and on the news. We can't go anywhere without seeing, slogans. Oh, we can stay apart, but gather together. All of these things, all of these various slogans, mask up and on and on and on. That's called flooding the zone, controlling the information where only Dr. Fauci can inform society. And when other practicing physicians, frontline physicians, stand up and give a different narrative, they are shut down by big tech. This is flooding the zone. Who are some of the attendees of this meeting? United Nations Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, NBC News, the CIA, Johns Hopkins School of Medicine / Bloomberg School of Public Health, the Chinese Center for Disease and Control Prevention. They were all in this attendance. Another group of red communist ideology is known as the Great Reset. The Great Reset, the same thing. I'm not talking conspiracy theories here. Go to their websites. Event 201 has a website. You can go and watch all their videos and listen to their speeches. Then also you have the Great Reset. Visit their website, look at their documents, and also listen to their speeches. And then there's also, I think, over an hour video that presents and has all of these the CEOs of major corporations that are talking about their contributions to this Great Reset. Well, it goes on to say, and this is drawn directly from their website, there is an urgent need for global stakeholders to cooperate in simultaneously managing the direct consequences of the COVID-19 crisis. Never let a crisis go to waste. To improve the state of the world. Oh my goodness, God doesn't know what he's doing with the world, so we need these people to improve the state of the world. I forgot. According to them, there is no God except them. The World Economic Forum is starting the Great Reset Initiative. It goes on to say, as we enter a unique window of opportunity to shape the recovery, this initiative will offer insights to help inform all those determining the future state of global relations, the direction of national economies, sounds like communism to me, the priorities of societies, the nature of business models, and the management of a global commons, drawing from the vision and vast expertise of the leaders engaged across the forum communities. The Great Reset Initiative has a set of dimensions to build a new social contract that honors the dignity of human beings everywhere. And then you go and you look at their transformation map, and you'll find certain things. Let's talk about some of the tenets of the Great Reset. The Great Reset will be the theme of a unique twin summit in January 2021, convened by the World Economic Forum. So this Great Reset is in anticipation of this coming event in January 2021. The Great Reset is a commitment to jointly and urgently, it's always got to be done urgently. It's got to be done quickly. We have to move on this now. Urgently build the foundations of our economic and social system for a more fair and sustainable and resilient future. The Twin Summit will be both in person and virtual, connecting key global government and business leaders in Davos with a global multi-stakeholder network in 400 cities around the world for a forward-oriented dialogue driven by the younger generation. If that doesn't scare you, a movement to be driven by the younger generation whose heads have been filled up in universities across the line with Marxist indoctrination. It goes on, we only have one planet, and we know that climate change could be the next global disaster with even more dramatic consequences for mankind. We have to decarbonize the economy in the short window still remaining and bring our thinking and behavior once more into harmony with nature, said Klaus Schwab, the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. And if you go to the Great Reset, you will hear from Klaus Schwab yourself. He plays a key role in this movement. It goes on to say, in order to secure our future and to prosper, we need to evolve our economic model and put people and planet at the heart of global value creation. If there is one critical lesson to learn from this crisis, it is that we need to put nature at the heart of how we operate. We simply can't waste more time. Well, who said that? The Prince of Wales, old Prince Charles himself, who also shows up in the videos. We can't waste time. We have to move on this quickly. We can't let this crisis go to waste. We have to move. And so it's always about moving fast and hurrying and pushing this thing and getting a solution and dragging the people along into it, where people don't even have time to stop and think and consider this. There's no questions asked. The science is already settled. You know, you'll hear language like that. And so we don't have time to talk about this or debate it. We have to move quickly. The Great Reset transformation map, as I mentioned, it lists a number of these things. And when you go to this transformation map, in order to click on each item, you have to sign up with an account. So they're not just going to let those who are curious and want to see what they're up to doing. You have to sign up, and you have to become a member. I don't know if you have to become a member of this movement, but you have to sign up. Give them all your information before they release this type of information. But when you click on any of these tabs, and you'll see this, you'll click on the tab sharing economic recovery, climate change, of course, LGBT inclusion, systemic racism. We're hearing that word used all the time. That's, again, flooding the zone, just constantly indoctrination, putting that before systemic racism, digital identity, concerning this virus, digital identity. And many in the faith community who believe that one day we will have a one world government that the Bible talks about in Revelation chapter 13, when this beastal system comes to power and individuals will be forced to have a mark put in their right hand or in their forehead. Well, there are some who are talking about that aspect, about this digital identity that will have all of your information on it. And of course, it's sold as, well, it's good, you know, it has your ID on it, it has your health records on it, you know, it has everything we need. It's very helpful in this age of computers. And so that's how they're selling it. And so right now they're forcing the mask on everyone, which is going to lead to forcing the vaccination on everyone. And who could know this could lead to, again, forcing the mark, where you cannot buy or sell unless you comply with what we see going on. Then they also talk about global governance. They talk about internet governance, controlling the information, the types of information you have access to on the internet. COVID-19, of course, sustainable development, which we hear a lot about, and redesigning social contracts. The World Economic Forum will draw on thousands of young people in more than 400 cities around the world, and they are known as the Global Shapers community. Isn't that a nice term? The Global Shapers, people who will shape the globe, because after all, God doesn't know what he's doing. God has made too many mistakes. God is old and outdated and old-fashioned. As Karl Marx says, religion has been replaced by the age of reason, and also the age of reason has been replaced by the Industrial Revolution, and then the Industrial Revolution will be replaced by communism. And so we don't need religion anymore. Religion is superfluous, so we don't need these Christians telling us what to do. We need a new group of people who will be global shapers, all of these young folks, who will be interconnected with a powerful virtual hub network to interact with the leaders in Davos. In addition, global media and social media networks. So now we see the importance of Google and Facebook and Twitter and all of these Silicon Valley think tanks and all of that, who control messages and also disseminate the information that they want. So it says enabling them to share their input while also providing them with access to the annual meeting discussions in Davos. And I'm almost finishing up here, so bear with me, hang in there. What time do we have? Well, let's see, I'm probably going over a little bit, but I have to finish this up. Let's continue on. So we have the event tool 1. We have the Great Reset. These are the red portions of the red-green axis, the communist portion. Then also we have domestic organizations that are rising up within the United States. Burn Down the American Plantation is a recent book that's put out online. It's a call for a revolutionary abolitionist movement. It was published in the United States by comrades of the revolutionary abolitionist movement. The book was written and published to inspire a new generation of revolutionaries. And if you can go online and look up Burn Down the American Plantation, and you see and hear their goals. And in it, they talk about abolishing police departments, abolishing prisons. No one gets punished for any crime. As a matter of fact, even murder. In this document, it talks about even if someone murders someone, then they'll be brought into this community, and they'll be it will be explained to them how that's not acceptable to community. It's a bad ideal, and they will be re-educated to make them a better citizen in the global community, because after all, you just have to talk with them. They're good on the inside, and so we just have to reform them and make them better. This is the kind of things that are talked about in this document. Then also you have the Antifa Manual. The Antifa Manual is found on the campus of the Evergreen State College. In it, it talks about, in its introduction, it says, do not distribute to any cisgender white males. Cisgender just means if you're born a male, or if you're born a vid, that's what they can refer to as cis male. You're cisgender. So the cis males, meaning the men, the oppressors who are born that way, don't let them see this information. Non-people of color, non-LGBT, other words, anyone who's a fascist. If you're not a part of Antifa, according to them, you're a fascist, you're a racist. You shouldn't be have access to this manual, because it's only for them. Then it goes on to say, if you are reading this, it's because someone close to our movement trusted you with it. Please do not distribute to anyone who may attempt to harm or denigrate what we are doing. And they go on to mention, because if anybody tries to harm or denigrate, or if anybody says anything or speaks anything against this movement, again, they are fascists, they are racist, no argument about it. This manual goes on to instruct whites, especially cis white males, have proven to be the greatest evil mankind has ever known. Now just think about that for a second. White men is the greatest evil ever known to mankind. Again, that shows you this is a movement, they do not believe in God, they reject God. And so since they reject God, they also reject the reality of Satan as well. The Bible clearly teaches that Satan is the enemy of God and humanity. And they say that the white man is the greatest evil of all mankind. Well, they sound just like Louis Farrakhan also in the Nation of Islam, because they teach the same thing, the old white blue-eyed devil. Again, insanity. But this is what the manual says. They go on to say also, this is why they're so fixated on color. This is why race is so important to them. This is what they say. Our color, my blackness, for example, comes first. Now, I thought when I read that, we talk about Black Lives Matter being a black movement, although we found out it is not a black movement. It is a Marxist movement. But then most times people look at Antifa and they think it's, again, a young, primarily Caucasian movement, but also is a communist movement. But this individual who was writing this manual, he says, our color, my blackness. So my question is this individual writing this manual, is he a black guy? I don't know. I didn't go that far to research, but I'm just going by what's saying here. Anyway, but they're fixated on color. They think with their skin. It says, our color, my blackness, for example, comes first. It defines who I am. So that's why you see so many people think that color defines who they are. Color does not define who we are. What we believe in our hearts is what defines who we are. Our life is not a collection of just melanin. Our life is what we believe, what we're exposed to. And as Christians, we believe in the gospel of Jesus Christ. That defines who I am. The Bible clearly tells us, as we read earlier, that Christ Jesus came into this world to save sinners, of whom I am chief. I am a sinner by nature. We're all sinners by nature. That's who we are. That's what the Bible says. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. But for all of those who place their faith in Jesus Christ, we are a new creature. We are a new creation. Old things have passed away and all things have become new. We are now made the children of God, the sons of God, and we have been raised up and seated in heavenly places. And we are made heirs and joint heirs with Jesus Christ, and we are made partakers of divine nature. That's who defines me, not my skin color. And it defines any Christian who believes that. Your skin color does not define you. But these individuals talk about how their skin color defines them. He says, black first, American second, gay and lesbian first, little person or dwarf second, America third, and on and on and on. So that's why they pay so much attention to shallow surface issues like race or skin colors, where we have a larger problem, which is ideology, and certainly collective ideologies that exalt themselves against the knowledge of God. This is the threat. Skin is not the threat. Belief systems that come against God, that is the true threat, but not to these individuals. The manual goes on to instruct them how to get fascists fired, a fascist or anybody who disagree with them. It also talks about how to control the media, the socialization of capital, the new world order, microchipping every human being on the planet, and one world government. And oh, by the way, they finish up by saying, we are Antifa. Either you are with us or you're a fascist. Again, that's certainly unfair fighting. If you just say you disagree with them, it's because you're a fascist, the argument's over and they walk away. Well, let's look at the conclusion here. Why do the nations rage and the people plot in vain? The kings of the earth rise up and the rulers band together against the Lord and against his anointed. When Jesus was on his ministry on the earth, he talked with his disciples, and he asked them, who do men say that I am? And their answer was, well, some people say that you're Jeremiah. Some people say that you're Elijah. Some people say that you're one of the other prophets. But then Jesus got personal and he asked the question directly to them. He says, but who do you say that I am? Well, Peter in response says, you are the Christ, in other words, the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And Jesus told Peter that flesh and blood didn't reveal this unto you, Peter, but my Father in heaven revealed this. So this is a spiritual thing, a spiritual war that we're in. Well, then Jesus went on to say that upon this fact that he is the Christ, the Son of the living God, upon this truth, upon this doctrine, this statement, Jesus is the foundation of the church. He said, upon this truth, this foundation, I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Well, we see again that there are many who do not believe in God, many who are offended by his tenets, who have individually come at him and were unsuccessful in their attempts to bring down the church. Well, now we see these groups joining forces to come against God's church. But Jesus says that he established his church upon the truth that he is the Messiah, the Son of a living God, and that the gates of hell will not prevail against him. Peter made a confession that Jesus was the Christ, the Son of the living God. Who do you say Jesus is? Who do you believe him to be? Was he just another prophet, another teacher, another good man like Gandhi or Martin Luther King? Or was he the savior of the world? Who do you say he is? I leave you with that thought. God bless you. We are complete with our discussion on communism, the dethroning of God, and the destruction of capitalism. God bless you. Goodbye.